We've entered the final stretch of the NFL regular season. We're in week 12, just 1 week away from Thanksgiving. Things are starting to get tight in that playoff race. And today I'm going to give you my breakdown and predictions of the upcoming action. And if this is something you enjoy, definitely hit the subscribe button. Last week didn't go so good for me with predictions. It was pretty rough, so we're looking to bounce back strong here in week 12. Let's dive right into it, starting with the Thursday night football game between the Steelers and the Browns. These two have a habit of playing each other close. This is usually a really good divisional rivalry game, but as of right now, I don't think there's a world where you can pick against the Steelers. Pittsburgh are coming off big wins back-to-back against the Commanders and the Baltimore Ravens. They look really good right now. Even when things are ugly, they're finding ways to get the W. The defense is clamping down. Russell Wilson's overdue for a better game. I don't know entirely about his health, but if he's ready to go, things should go a lot more swimmingly against a Browns team that is basically dead in the water. Jameis Winston is just too inconsistent as well. This Steelers team is on a big winning streak. They're on a heater. They look like one of the best teams in the league. And against Cleveland, who have 2 wins on the season, this shouldn't even be a contest. As for the 1 p.m. slates on Sunday, let's start with an NFC North divisional game between the Vikings and the Bears. I can smell some upset potential here. I don't know if I'd be brave enough to pick the Bears, but this game could be closer than what's advertised, as the Bears just had a heartbreaking loss against the Packers. In actuality, they probably should have won that game if it weren't for a blocked field goal attempt. They did everything they needed to win that game, and while they didn't put up a lot of points, I did see at least some progression with the offense compared to some of the other weeks we've seen recently out of them, which could be a good sign heading into this very important matchup. And they're playing a Vikings team that hasn't looked as strong as they did at the beginning of this year. They definitely played significantly better in that matchup against the Tennessee Titans. But against this Bears team, against a divisional rival, we could see them slip up again. I could see this going down to the wire. I could foresee the Bears giving another divisional rival some kind of struggle. But you got to go with the Vikings in this scenario. They are just the more consistent football team. And even though Sam Darnold has looked a bit weaker recently, it's still better than what most of Caleb Williams has shown this year. I think in crunch time, this Vikings team finds a way to get a victory. Maybe it won't be the prettiest win in the world, but they are the better football team right now. They're more reliable, and that's all there really is to it. Speaking of the NFC North, the Lions are playing the Indianapolis Colts. And again, as I've said a lot recently, the Lions are just on a heater right now. There's no world where I can pick against these guys until they actually lose, or it feels like a game where things actually aren't in their favor. This is definitely not one of those times. Lions should be winning pretty easily yet again here. The Colts, I am interested to see how they play. Maybe they could make this a somewhat interesting football game. Anthony Richardson in his first start back was able to get a big win over the Jets. That's a great way to build up your confidence and your momentum. The Colts are not dead yet. This is a very important game for them, and I expect that they will show some fight. But with how the Lions are operating on offense right now, there's just no world where they're going to be losing to a mediocre team like this. Detroit looks unstoppable. But yeah, moving into another divisional game, the Patriots are playing the Dolphins for the second time this year. The last time these two played, things looked significantly different. You had Jacoby Brissett starting on the side of the Patriots, and no Tua for the Miami Dolphins. In spite of all of that though, even without Tua, the Dolphins were able to beat New England. Now that they have Tua out there against a Patriots team that lacks talent on defense, this probably should be a somewhat easy win for the Dolphins. Divisional games are never a cakewalk, and especially with Drake May, it kind of changes up how you have to prepare for things. But this Patriots team lacks the talent to beat anyone who's kind of in the situation the Dolphins are in, where they clearly have a better offense, and they're in desperation mode to try and catch up and still have a glimmer of hope of making the playoffs. This should be a win for Miami, just knowing the history. They've had the Patriots number recently, and even with Drake May out there, that still should be the same. Then you have the Giants versus the Bucs. Now, on paper, this game shouldn't be all that close. Should be an easy win for Tampa Bay, just knowing that the Giants are a dysfunctional mess and their season is already over, while Tampa Bay are fighting for a spot in the NFC South to potentially win that division still. But the Giants at the very least have some kind of interesting headline for the first time in a long time, seeing as they benched Daniel Jones in favor of Tommy DeVito. They're only 5 weeks late, but they actually did it. Just having a different quarterback out there, knowing the frustrations this offense has suffered, should provide some kind of jolts of life. I don't know to what extent, but just having a guy who can more easily find the open receiver downfield is more than likely going to result in a more entertaining Giants offense. I just don't know to what extent and how quickly it's going to happen. DeVito is overrated in my opinion in terms of the Giants fan base and how they rave about him. And I think at the very least, it'll take him a week or two to get back into the swing of it and re-find that form that he did in mid-season of last year. And against this desperate Bucs team, I think there's going to be some struggles, there's going to be some growing pains, and that should really be all you need to know about this one. I think that with Mike Evans potentially coming back, the Giants defense are not going to have any answers to Baker in that offense. The Bucs need this one too badly to let it slip away. Then, to keep the spirit of the NFC East alive, the Dallas Cowboys are playing the Washington Commanders, and we all know the Commanders should be winning this one very easily. It's been a rough last couple of weeks for these guys. This is a good gimme match to get them back in the W column. The Cowboys are just an absolute mess with Cooper Rush out there. They stand no chance of beating any competent team, let alone many teams at all in this league right now. They're basically quitting on the season. They're waving the white flag. So against a Commanders team that has been one of the better ones in the NFC, this should not even be a contest. Speaking of no contest, the Chiefs are taking on the Panthers. And just knowing that the Chiefs lost to the Bills last week and ruined their chance at perfection, this is a game where they need to blow off some steam against one of the worst teams in terms of talent in the entire NFL. The Chiefs should be blowing out the Panthers here, a chance to finally get a blowout win on their resume. Their weapons should be able to take advantage of a very weak Panthers defense. Now, the Panthers at the very least are going to feel kind of good coming into this, if you want to say that. A 2-game winning streak, the bye week to prepare for this. Maybe they can come out and execute a game plan early on before the Chiefs inevitably pull ahead. I'm hoping the Panthers continue this momentum as a Giants fan so we can stay ahead of them in the NFL draft. But as for this game, the Chiefs should be winning very easily. Just to stay on the trend of games that feel like they could be a blowout on paper, the Titans are playing the Texans in an AFC South divisional battle. The Titans have a tendency to play some teams close because of that defense and randomly having a big play from Will Levis here and there, but Houston are just in a different class compared to these guys, sadly. They finally got a convincing win against Dallas. It wasn't the prettiest at first, but they did pull away, and I think they'll use that momentum to their advantage and beat the Tennessee Titans as well. Again, there's no world where I'm picking Mayo Man to win a game right now. That guy is not an NFL quarterback. He is freaking terrible. The Texans should eventually pull away, even though it may take a while because they have been prone to some mistakes this year. It hasn't been the same Texans team as last year, but they'll get this W for sure. And oh boy, another divisional battle, this time between the Broncos and the Raiders. And honestly, this probably will be a blowout in favor of Denver, just like the last time they played against the Raiders. The Raiders, they did show some life against the Dolphins, but in general, since that game against Denver, it has been nothing but downhill for them, while the Broncos have been riding off of that win, and they've consistently been a competitive team this year. These two are in two completely different classes right now. It's absurd to think about when you just remember the preseason expectations, but that's where we're at. That Denver defense is suffocating, the Raiders offense has no consistency whatsoever, and Bo Nix has shown steady improvement. If he can drop 30 points against the Falcons, I don't see why he couldn't do the same thing against the Raiders. This should be an easy win for the Denver Broncos. Maybe a little closer than last time because you never know at divisional games, but I have all the confidence in the world the Broncos get this win. Then we head towards what's more of one of the interesting games of the week. The Niners are playing the Packers. The rivalry continues yet again for another season. And this one is very different compared to some of the other meetings, as the Niners don't feel like these overwhelming favorites for once. They've been struggling this year, a lot of inconsistencies, dealing with injuries. That heartbreaking loss to Seattle definitely doesn't help them either, and the Packers have been more afloat than them. Haven't always been the prettiest wins out of those guys, but they've been finding ways to get it done while the Niners have not. And I'd be really scared if I'm San Fran. You already know the Packers want to get revenge after what happened in the playoffs last year, and they just might make it happen here. They definitely feel like the better team right now. It's so hard to say, especially because you don't know what version of the 49ers you're going to get. Oh, man. I want to say the Packers win this game, but I can't get myself to do it. Because for whatever reason, the Niners just own the Packers. Remember how last week I said the Packers own the Bears? Well, the Niners just beat these guys every single time they play. It doesn't matter if it's Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback, Jordan Love, they just find a way to get it done. And I don't want to go against that. The Niners haven't been the greatest this season, but they still have that potential. They still have the roster needed to compete in the NFC. And I think they're going to come back and get a big win after that rough one against Seattle. Christian McCaffrey, they've been building up his workload slowly. He is overdue for a big game. And I think him and those boys are going to have that happen in this matchup against Green Bay. They'll have their way in the run game. Brock Purdy will play clutch, and they'll win a close game. The Packers should have lost to the Bears this week, and I think this will be karma. They can't keep getting away with those close losses. They're overdue after what just happened against Chicago. So I'll be picking the 49ers. And that's not the only close game that's really hard to judge, as the Cardinals are playing the Seahawks. This one's pretty difficult to judge as well, as the Cardinals right now have looked like the best team overall in the NFC West. They're on a winning streak right now. They're coming off a bye, well prepared for this divisional game, but they're playing a Seahawks team that has commonly beaten them in the past. In the Geno Smith era, the Seahawks have not lost to the Cardinals yet. The last time the Cardinals beat Seattle was November 21st. It has been almost 3 whole years at the time of this recording, and by the time they play on Sunday, it will have been 3 whole years. These divisional games, especially between two teams like this, are extremely hard to call. But the one thing I'm going to say is that this Cardinals team usually plays the Seahawks hard, and that goes for the Geno era and a little bit before that. A lot of these games certainly do come down to the wire, and I think now that the Cardinals are just a better team compared to previous years, and they have more weapons, that it could be enough for them to finally get over the hump and beat the Seattle Seahawks. I am going to pick the Cardinals on the road to win this game and end the losing streak, end the drought of always being the little brother to these guys. I know I'm kind of contradicting myself after the whole Packers game that I just talked about, but at the end of the day, the Seahawks I don't think are all that trustworthy. Yes, they did just beat San Fran, but they can never follow it up. It's always a big win followed by disappointment. That is just the way the Seattle Seahawks have been this year. While the Cardinals have shown at least some kind of consistency recently, I deem them as the more trustworthy team. The NFC West is tough. It almost feels like nobody deserves to pull ahead, but I think the Cardinals are going to do it here with a big win over the Seahawks. Looking into Sunday night, the Rams are taking on the Eagles, and this has a lot of room for upset potential. Is Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp enough to overwhelm this Eagles secondary that's been clamping down recently? In general, the Eagles defense has looked really good as of late. Now, I still think that they're overrated and this team could be fraudulent. This Rams offense could very easily take them down. But I don't know if the Rams defense at the same time has any answers for what the Eagles are doing offensively right now, with how Saquon's been operating, with how efficient they've been in the red zone, the crazy potential of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to break off a big play. This is going to be a shootout in my eyes, but because the Eagles defense has been showing some life as of late, I think I trust them slightly more to make a stop when it's needed. I'm going to go with the Eagles. They've been hot lately. I still think they're overrated, but I don't think the Rams could be that team to beat them. They're just going to fall short. It will be uncomfortable, but I'm taking Philly at home. And finally, on Monday night, on what is a very short week with 6 teams on a bye, the Chargers are playing the Ravens. This could be the game of the week. The Chargers have gotten better and better, in my opinion. That game against the Bengals was a little close for comfort, but in general, outside of that outlier, their defense has been incredible this season. Statistically, I believe they're probably still top in terms of points per game. I could be wrong there, but they're up there for sure. And the Ravens are coming off a rough loss to the Steelers, another team with a good defense. They only managed to put up 16 points, and they lost to death by field goal. I could see the Chargers doing something similar to them, but they'll be more likely to put up points because right now their offense is starting to click. Justin Herbert is finding more guys downfield. The pass game looks more explosive, while the run game is still reliable. The Ravens defense also hasn't been very good compared to their previous iteration last year. It's been a major downgrade. There's room for the Chargers to win this one somewhat convincingly, for sure. But in the end, I think the Ravens are a different team compared to previous years. where sometimes when things get ugly, when they have a bad loss, they get in their own head and they go on a losing streak, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. Every time the Ravens have had a tough loss, they've usually bounced back strong outside of like weeks 1 and 2 or whatever it was. That's just how this Ravens team has been. They've looked resilient. Lamar in general has been having some great bounce back games, and I think they're going to find a way to beat this Chargers team. Outside of the game against the Bengals, the Chargers haven't played a lot of offenses as complete as Baltimore. And John Harbaugh, I think he is the better coach compared to Jim. He's shown it in the past, and I think he's going to get the better of his brother again in the next iteration of the Harbaugh Bowl. I think between Derrick Henry and Lamar kind of slowly but surely finding cracks in the armor, that they'll win this game. It's going to be a tough one. I think both teams are going to be on the ground a lot to see who can control time of possession. It will be low scoring. There's a possibility of that, but I don't think this Chargers defense has been challenged enough this year. We saw it in the Bengals game, and I think the Ravens show that as well here to get a close win. They're going to bounce back. Chargers fans, I apologize for doubting your team again, but this could be the last time, especially if you're able to beat Baltimore here, so go out there and prove me wrong. Anyway, that wraps up my breakdown and predictions for Week 12 of the 2024 NFL season. Let me know what you think of my Preds down in the comments below and who you think is going to win this week and what your best bets are. And if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it a lot if you could like this video and subscribe for more weekly NFL content.